Welcome to How to Make the Most of Your Business Development Time, brought to you by the Welcome to How to Make the Most of Your Business Development Time, brought to you by the Martindale Legal Marketing Network in conjunction with the American Bar Association. The Martindale Legal Marketing Network helps attorneys grow their practice through real-time lead generation, online legal profiles, and custom website services. And as the largest legal marketing network, they connect more consumers with attorneys than anyone else. With more than 400,000 members, the American Bar Association is one of the largest voluntary professional membership organizations in the world. The ABA is dedicated to providing members with resources that help them become better legal professionals and to advocating for the rule of law, both domestically and abroad. For today's program, we will start with introductions, cover business development best practices, followed by an interactive panel discussion. I am John Rice, and I will be serving as your moderator today. I'm an attorney with Elmore Stone and Caffey, PLLC, in Knoxville, Tennessee. My practice areas include civil litigation and appellate practice, commercial and business disputes, and civil defense. Joining us today are Brian Bowman. Brian is Legal Marketing Specialist with Martindale-Hubbell. We also have Silva Meagher-Ditchian. Silva is the Managing Attorney with the Law Office of Silva L. Meagher-Ditchian, and we have Logan Quirk. Logan is an attorney with the Quirk Law Group. Before we get started, just a few reminders. You can submit questions through the webinar platform. Questions will be answered at the end, and any unanswered questions will be responded to after the event. The webinar replay will be provided to all attendees and registrants after the event. Here's a snapshot of how you can submit questions during the presentation. Brian, can you get us started?
Absolutely. Thanks so much, John. Welcome, young lawyers and panelists alike. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. As John said, my name is Brian Bowman. I'm with Martindale-Hubbell. I have spent the last 10 years focusing exclusively on legal marketing. Okay. The purpose of this webinar is to help the up-and-coming next generation of young lawyers enter the business world with a bit of a leg up. We're hoping that by hearing from experienced marketing professionals as well as experienced attorneys, that you all might learn something that will help you with the business end of your practice, moving forward as you start to get out there. The best law schools in the country barely touch on the business development aspect, and as I'm sure you guys are already finding out, without new clients, you don't have a practice. Okay, so we'll just roll forward with this, understanding the difference between business development, marketing, and sales. Lots of things in common there, but they are very different. The easiest way to understand business development is determining who your audience is and aligning yourself with the people, the vendors, the groups, etc., in order to attract that audience. Determine who you want your audience to be. That's probably the most important part about business development, and we'll get back to that a little later on. Marketing is simply strategically exposing your business to your chosen audience in an effort to attract them. Anybody can drop a fishing line into the water, right? It is the strategy part that leads to success, strategically exposing your business to your chosen audience. And finally, sales is if everything else works out well and your desired audience is attracted to your business, how do you secure their business as a client? That's the sale. To continue the fishing analogy, if dropping a line in the water is marketing, then sales is the ability to set the hook. And if fishing euphemisms don't work for any of you, then reach out to me later and we can use poker, baseball, wedding planning, or anything else that will help it sink in better for you. Another important part about business development is identifying your strengths. If the marketing aspect is not your strength, then hire somebody else to make it rain for you. If you're not a salesperson at heart, then make sure you do hire somebody who can be that for you. The question you need to ask, who is bringing in your future clients? If it's not a strength of yours, find somebody else who can do it. You can advance the slide. Very important. Stop saying, I don't have the time. Time management skills are essential for every business owner, They're essential for every business person. You have to allocate business development time in order to prevent your pipeline from drying up on you. You don't want to know the panic and the fear that can come if you realize that you have nothing to work on. What do I do today? That tends to make business people sweat pretty quickly. Prioritize, be efficient during these time slots that you've allocated. Avoid any distractions, and I know that is infinitely harder in today's world, but that's why it's also infinitely more important to avoid the distractions. On average, attorneys spend only 29% of their day on billable activities. Think about that. 29% of their day on billable activities. Use some time to ensure that you always have another client or case to be working on. Advance the slide. At this point, I'd like to bring on Logan Quirk. Logan is a personal injury attorney in California, and I just want to bring him in to address some questions from his standpoint. Logan, how do you generate business today, and how diversified are your efforts?
Thank you, Brian. How I generate business today is I try to kind of put different hooks in the water to play off your fishing analogy. I market to attorneys who shed cases that was instrumental in me growing and developing my business. I go online and I try to do the digital thing. I am not familiar with that, so I have outsourced that to someone. That is not one of my strengths. So like you were referring to earlier, definitely know your strengths and know what you can do. So I've outsourced that to a specialist. And then any opportunity I get, I just try and market myself and capitalize on opportunities that I have that are presented to me. There's very few opportunities that you get, and some of the most lucrative opportunities you get are the ones you don't realize at that moment. So that's what I try and do.
Great, thanks, Logan. As far as allocating time, do you have a set schedule? How do you manage your time?
That's always tough. So the best way is to definitely set a schedule every week and have a day dedicated to marketing. I think by default, attorneys have trouble with marketing because they think it's not work. But, you know, like you said, we have to have the pipeline keep feeding us cases. So what I try and do is I try to take off early every Friday and devote at least 4 or 5 hours to marketing, or if my schedule permits, I try to shuffle one day a week to try and grow my business. You never want to be comfortable, because once you settle, then you get too comfortable, and, you know, God forbid, you know, the pipeline may dry up. So you always want to be hustling and keeping in mind that, in my opinion, law is not a practice anymore, it's a business. So you're in competition with others, and you always have to keep trying to grow that pipeline and make sure that cases are coming through, because like you said, you always want something to work on. You don't want to ever go, oh, I don't have anything to work on today, what do I do? If you're in that position, then you want to go and try and drum up as much business as possible.
I think that's a great line for the young lawyers out there to remember, that you know, it's no longer a practice, it is a business. Everything that you would need to grow any other kind of a business, you have to attack just the same with the legal practice. Logan, did you have somebody help you with business development in the beginning? A family member, a mentor, somebody like that?
I first started out with my brother, and he and I grew his business by trial and error. So I think I learned a lot from him. But once I branched off and formed my own business, it was just me. I didn't really have much money to hire out anyone. Sorry, my puppy's barking in the background. I really didn't have much money in the bank to hire anyone. So I was trial and error. I was meeting doctors. I was meeting people that I identified would be instrumental in referring me cases. And that was the brand, that was identifying my target audience: doctors, insurance agents, body shops. And I would go and knock on their doors and, you know, talk to them and try and drum up as much business as possible. You have to get familiar with rejection. A lot of times, you know, we work with these attorneys already. What can you offer us? And as a young attorney, there's not much you can offer them. But occasionally they would feed me a case or two, and you work it like hell, and then you hopefully that your efforts are rewarded, and those people start referring you to their friends and family, and slowly but surely your business starts to grow.
Perfect. Thank you, Logan. I think that's exactly what we want to hear. All right, we'll come back to Logan in a little bit. You can advance the slide again. All right. Don't waste time going after business you don't really want. I don't know why, but this slide makes me laugh. But when it says don't waste time going after business you don't really want, I always add to that, those calls will come naturally, right? I mean, the idea is to make the phone ring with the ones that you do want. The ones that you don't want are going to call you also. In the beginning, it's important to learn what a first-rate client is for you. What does a good lead look like, sound like? And how do we get more of them? Different practice areas take in different factors, but all practitioners should know what a good lead looks like and what a bad lead looks like for their particular practice. Most leads that come in are kind of in the middle. It's rare to find one that's, gold like the image here. But ask yourself what a good lead for you would look like, right? So does a good lead have to have X amount of dollars or more? Do they have to have documented or have some paperwork already filled out and ready to go? Does there need to be witnesses? I'm sure Logan would much prefer if there was a witness to the accident in hand as opposed to just somebody saying so. Things like that. You'll all learn what the cues are that you're looking for to distinguish a good lead from a bad lead. The point is to keep your eye out for the good ones and understand what makes them a good one so that you can use that to target your marketing efforts to get more of them. Experience is going to help you recognize what a bad one is quicker. Just try and hear the cues, and the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. Okay, you can advance the slide. All right. Be sure you're speaking to a decision maker. This goes back to Logan, pounding the pavement and going out there and trying to drum up as much business on an outbound side of things. Take it from me, personal experience, it is possible to end up giving the greatest presentation or representation, the greatest pitch of your life that you will ever make. And if you don't make it to the decision maker, you might as well have not made it at all. And Murphy's Law will say that the greatest presentation you ever do will be in front of somebody that can't afford to make the decision you want them to. From an inbound standpoint, that was if you're out there pounding the pavement. But if people are calling into you, let's say your marketing efforts are working and they're calling into you, who's making your firm's first impression, right? The phone rings at the firm. Somebody answers the phone. Is it you? Is it somebody else? Are they in-house? Were they outsourced? Are they pleasant when they answer the phone? Something else that's very important is, are they trained in sales? A lot of the time they're not, but if it is you that gets to hire the receptionist for you, then a little hint here is look for somebody that has some sales background. And the reason is because somebody that has a sales background will not let a potential good client not book an appointment with you. They'll close that aspect for you to ensure that you get as many chances at bat as possible. All right. Logan, I want to go back to you at this point. Who handles your inbound calls?
My inbound calls right now, I've gone back and forth. I've had, what do you call those people that answer the telephones for you? Sorry, I'm going blanking. The inbound, like modern receptionists or lead specialists that kind of are trained in sales and they know the cues to look for. I've had those people answer my phones, but they're expensive. Currently, I have a automated system in place where it can press 1 for new clients, press 2 for Logan, and then once it press 1, it rings to my cell phone. So I'm personally handling most of my first telephone calls. That way I can vet the case really quickly, and then what I tell them is, I think I can help you out. I'm going to have my paralegal or my receptionist give you a call and do a fuller intake. Brian, you mentioned something about bad leads. I get a lot of leads that aren't necessarily in my wheelhouse, and I don't think there's anything as a bad lead. If you get something that's not in your practice area, I would generate a referral-based system of attorneys that you can refer that person out to. That way that one person who calls your office is feeling like they get helped, and they may have an accident in the future and call you back, or they may have a case in the future that is in your wheelhouse. So I don't think there's any bad leads. Always try and help the people that are calling your office. So that's why it's really important to develop I call it like a digital Rolodex of attorneys that you can refer those leads out to. But in relation to who answers my phone calls for prospective new clients, I answer all the telephone calls that ring to my cell phone. On my website, I have a professional chat service I have a few other referrals that come to me through referral sources, so that's how my incoming prospective clients are handled.
Well, thank you, Logan. And you know what? You're right. In fact, I'm going to start using that myself for my purposes. There's no such thing as a bad lead. As an injury attorney, though, I'm sure you get some that are quote unquote unqualified for your purposes as an injury lawyer. Do you have any tricks to sift through the leads to be able to pick the golden egg, so to speak?
Yeah, so I mean, you develop cues. You develop a list of questions, like a checklist that kind of check all the boxes. For example, are you at fault for the accident? Yes, that's usually a case I'm not going to take. What are your injuries? I don't have any injuries. Well, I do personal injury, so I'm sorry, but I can't help out if you're not going to get injury treatment. Do you have insurance? No, I don't have insurance. The other party that hit me doesn't have insurance. Well, there's not really much I can do in that situation. So those are questions that you're gonna, as you go along in practice, through trial and error or through a mentor-mentee type situation, you're gonna know what questions to ask to vet the cases real fast. And then with a fuller type intake, you can have your paralegal or a professional intake person ask those follow-up questions and tell them that this is a good case, this isn't a good case. And then if it's not a good case, you want to give them options. That way they don't feel like they're being outrightly declined. So what I'll tell them is, hey, you should probably call the Los Angeles County Bar Association because I practice in Los Angeles. They might have an attorney that can help you out, or you may want to go to small claims, something of that. That way they don't feel like I'm rejecting them because I'm not taking their case.
That's very important too. We're going to get into something a little later about treating every call as a potential online reviewer, and I think you're doing it right, Logan, and making sure that even if you can't help them with the way that you want to help them, you're still seen as helpful. And you never know, like you said, everything can come back around as a referral. So that's very helpful. Thank you. Okay, we can advance the slide. All right. The pair two principle, 80-20 rule, it does work. Basically, many of you probably haven't heard about this, but you can go ahead and Google it. The sense of it is 20% of actions lead to 80% of results. In the marketing world, we use that more as 80% of new business comes from 20% of current clients. I'll say that again. 80% of new business comes from 20% of current clients. Get to know your current clients, even if you only have a few of them at this stage of the game. Okay? Listen for cues. What do they do for a living? What sports or hobbies are they into? What social groups? I know, we get wrapped up into intake kind of questions, but getting to know your current clients outside of their legal issue will help you understand who your audience is, and it'll also help you kind of duplicate or clone those if that was a good client. You find out more about them so that you can be better positioned to find others that are similar. It's just smart marketing, and it doesn't hurt. And honestly, you'd be amazed how many referrals come with this kind of a line. You should call Logan. He really cares. We spent time just talking about family. Things like that go a long way, and it'll not only help you professionally, but it'll help them feel more comfortable with you. Go ahead and advance the slide. All right. Fairly self-explanatory, I think, but it is important to understand and probe and be empathetic when you're listening to a prospective client. Ask questions, ask more questions, then ask follow-up questions. At this stage, you don't need to sell your service. You're a lawyer and you're on the phone or in front of a prospective client. They know what you do. At this stage, you should be listening and not pitching. You may offer solutions based on what you have heard and uncovered. Sometimes it's good to even start the sentence that way. Based on what you've just said, ma'am, I think. Okay? Digitally, make sure that any intake forms on websites that you might be a part of or directory sites that you might be on have a required area for open-ended comments and questions. You will learn a lot in that open-ended section. And again, to go back to what Logan was saying, this would be an easy way to quickly qualify or unqualify. Similar is, I'm sure you guys have seen live chat pop-ups on websites. Some vendors are better than others. The best ones are the ones that ask open-ended questions. This is best because it's good for the user to not feel like they're being scripted towards a call to action at the end, but they're actually engaged in a conversation with a person. But it also helps that prospect become more sticky. Think about if you had just poured your heart out in a paragraph to a website about your bankruptcy, about a death in the family, about an accident that happened at work, about a crime you might be getting accused of. Once you've put that out in writing, you are less likely to want to say it again to somebody else. Okay, so it's important to let them vent. Let your prospective clients have an area like a live chat or like an open-ended intake form where they can really tell you the whole story and not just the A/B script things. At this point, I'd like to bring in Silva into the discussion. Silva is a criminal defense attorney in Los Angeles. Silva, I'm curious, how do you network today?
Oh, hi, everyone. Yeah, it's one of those things that I think the most important lesson I learned the hard way was every single person that you come across can be a potential client. I do criminal defense, and for me, it's so specialized. I represent children and I represent adults. And I always say to people, you never need me until you need me, and then you urgently need me. I'll give you just a funny example, and then I'll give you actual things I've done aggressively. Like Logan, when I went out, I was a public defender, and all my cases were given to me, so I never had to really hustle for clients. So getting out, it was this crazy perspective because I left with another public defender. We partnered, and then he's my best friend. He still is my best friend, but we decided to start our own firms and separate from the partnership. Ironically, I was in the hospital for a surgery, non-elective surgery. And ironically, the nurse that took care of me called me 4 months later to have me represent her son in a criminal matter because I guess my husband had slipped her my card. It shows you the effectiveness of every person you meet. Always try to give out your card because it's like a spider web. And I've been on my own now for about 4 years, and it's really true that every person that you meet, they might not call you today or tomorrow or next month. I've had contacts from people I've met from 3 years ago that you leave an impact on just by being yourself and being genuine. I always tell new lawyers, and I learned the hard way too, you don't have to be the commercial. No one wants to hire a commercial. They want a personal relationship. Every year I send cards to my existing clients and my past clients. I don't care if I represented them the first month I went private 4 years ago. They will be reminded of my presence. So if anyone, even, oh my God, my neighbor was arrested for trespassing. God, trespassing, what is that? Oh, criminal law. Oh yes, Silva, let me call her. The other thing I highly recommend is even networking organization, where there are skilled people. Skilled people have a lot of clients themselves who get into trouble. So networking like Provisors or the 10 Network, all of those are essential because, again, I always look at it like a web. You don't make a small web. You're making massive, beautiful webs where people will always know how to find you. Just as another example, Logan, who I met because of this. We set up a lunch together because I will have clients to send him. Every person you meet has the potential to bring more business. So I think that's the key. And putting yourself out there, no matter where you are, putting yourself out there is essential.
Okay, that's great. So the answer to where is everywhere. The answer to when is all the time.
Yeah, within reason, of course. I think when you go into business for yourself, it's exactly what you said and what Logan said. When the phone calls stop, that's what gives anxiety, because you're always wondering, when is my next phone call? Did I make my quota for the month? Am I going to be able to pay rent? That's why it's so essential to always be in a place where a simple lunch, where a waitress was really cool to you, flip the card with the bill. In every capacity, I think it's always good to shut it down. Just like, for instance, I shut it down on Fridays. Friday is my day to catch up on work. I try to avoid court appearances. That is my day to be selfish and to get my mind back to normal functioning. You have to remain selfish and stop marketing for your mental health, because sometimes it gets overwhelming. But yet balancing that as well. Don't miss opportunities because it feels awkward. Because in the end of it, the business is under your name, and you need to feed your families. And the best way to do that is be memorable.
Absolutely. We were talking about the 80-20 principle. Do you use your clients to expand your pipeline? How did that come to be in the beginning when there's only a few clients to work off of?
It's such a great question, and it's really a wonderful principle, and it's very true. It's all about that web. One client that you served, and you served well. And my biggest advice in the beginning, because it's going to be slim pickings in the beginning, just make sure you do your best work ever. And then the second thing is always make sure your best work ever is documented by that client via the web. And be careful where you place that on the web. There's a lot of trolls as well. So be careful where you place that. I am not one that frequents, let's say, certain, social media contexts, just because you want to be sure that your review is well received, well seen in the right places. And that's, I think, the key. Existing clients make the best referrals and the best reviews when you do great work. So it absolutely is true. What also, and I'm sure we'll get into this later, what was really key for me was in the beginning I was unable to afford web services on my own. Literally in the very beginning, every penny is out and not coming in. So you have to be really selective on how you market as well. And so the cheapest way is to make sure your product that you give to those few clients that you get in the very beginning are so satisfied with what you've done for them through personal communication. Always answer your phones to them. Once you sign them, don't send them to anyone else. Take care of them personally. And then drop a phone call, old-fashioned phone call, just checking in on them. Hey, how's your family? How's your son? How's your daughter? And just always keep your name there. Let them not forget your name, especially with a name like mine. Not the easiest name to remember, so I always try to remain relevant in my beginning referrals when they're few and far between, or my clients.
That's all great advice. Thanks so much, Silva. As a criminal defense attorney, I'm sure you get some interesting stories come across. How important is it to your success to be able to listen? And the more you listen, do you find that you uncover other things that you didn't think you would?
I love the expression. I just heard it. It's God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. Uh-huh. And it's really true. As a lawyer, most of our business is, when we sell ourselves, we're always talking. But when you have a potential client, I feel like, and I deal with this a lot in my juvenile practice, people just want to be heard. They want to complain and they want someone to hear them. In the criminal defense world, the law kind of shuts people up. You're charged with a crime. You're really not able to talk about what happened until the very end of the process, that trial, if it goes that direction. So you are the person that they rely on to talk to. So you have to listen intently, absolutely be non-judgmental, no matter how crazy the events are, maintaining professionalism and really not judging. So yeah, listening is a huge part. And something else also, just always control the conversation, because sometimes these stories can literally take hours. So make sure, but keep your hat on. You're not a therapist, you're the attorney. You're there for strategy. You're not there to help them, understand why bad things happen to good people. You're there to give them the tools to get out of it. That's great lawyering and also a great business person, because your eye always has to be on the problem, which is the client tells you the problem. You are the problem solver. And I think that's essential when dealing with clients. Always remember your role. You're not a family member and you're not a therapist. And I fell into that a little bit in the beginning, being overly compassionate when listening to my clients.
Right. No, that's great advice. I mean, if they're talking to a lawyer, it means that they need legal help, most likely, or at least feel that they need legal help. And if maybe a psychiatrist is better suited, then you can feel free to give that advice as well.
Oh, amen. And always be careful too, because the phone call, you're not getting paid. So be careful with free advice. I learned the hard way. If you want strategy, you come to my office in person, and you're going to have to pay for that, because a lot, and you learn this in the beginning, how many times I essentially gave them, the structure of how to fight their case, and then they go ahead and they hire a public defender where they're not paying anything and leading the public defender on structure. So be really careful. Leave the golden nuggets to when the retainer is signed.
That is really good advice, and I piggyback off of that a little bit from a marketing standpoint. We want to when we market ourselves, we want to show our expertise and our knowledge. And what I've run into in my world a few times is, we'll take a bankruptcy attorney, for example, has a website promoting himself, but on there he tells you there's things in the website that are headlines that say things like, the bankruptcy process, what you need to know, frequently asked questions. Yeah. How you can get through the process. And before you know it, it's a great website. The phone isn't ringing that much because you pretty much told him exactly how to file, where to file, and how to do it on his own. So we need to make sure that we are also promoting how great we are at doing what we do for a living, more so than we are at giving you the answers that you need before you give us a call.
Amen. And I always keep this in mind, and someone actually told me about this. In movies, the trailers, when the trailer gives too much of the movie, no one wants to see it, right? You always keep the best scenes or the best advice to the in-person meeting when you're signing the client. And yeah, selling myself has been really difficult. I've never had to sell myself before. I almost got insulted because someone asked me, well, how do I know you're the best? And I literally, in the very beginning, I told my client, well, my record speaks for myself. But guess what? There was no website. I had no record online. And I was a public defender for over 7 years. So it was a very, you kind of drink the juice of understanding. You have to be able to have almost a little bit of an elevator speech of why this client needs you and why you're so good at what you do. It's essential, and have that in a small place that you can memorize it and use that. So when a client asks you that, you'll know how to answer.
Absolutely. I would say ask, for you young lawyers out there, ask yourself that question. What makes you better than others? You might not have an answer if you're just starting, but it's definitely something good to keep in mind, and it helps you formulate a goal to work towards as well. All good stuff, Silva. Thanks so much.
No problem, hon. Thank you.
We can go ahead and advance the slides. We'll come back to Silva in a little bit. This says important people like to deal with other important people. The real question here to ask yourself is, how does anybody know, and this goes to what Silva was just talking about, how does anybody know that you are good at what you do? And in this case, we're talking about from an advertising standpoint, they haven't talked to you yet. Maybe referrals are the best way to figure that out. Of course they are. But if I don't have a referral and I'm looking for a lawyer, Yellow Pages, online, billboards, wherever it is that I'm looking for one, how do I know that you are the one? Clients want to know, even consumers want to know that they've chosen a winner. Visible credentials matter, right? So while they may not necessarily know the reputation of your law school, clients will look for reviews, ratings, awards, public identifiers that identify you as a winner. Network also to build your brand. We touched on that before, but there's things out there like, maybe you've heard of some of them. There's Shining Stars, Up and Comers, Texas Monthly. There's magazines out there. These are all things that come with badges and accolades, but are really simply for being part of these networks. And the more networks you're a part of, the more you appear to be more experienced and have greater expertise online. Ratings, reviews, getting yourself an online robust presence. You're not just on one directory. You don't just have one website, but there's other places. Because, I'm sure if you did a search for a lawyer right now on Google, for example, and there was one website for Megan and she wasn't listed anywhere else, then, or Silva, where else would she be if she's only in the one place? What happens is underneath, there's competitors there. There's other directories where people can go find attorneys that are not you. Make sure that you're diversifying your efforts. We can move on to the next slide. We touched on this a little bit with Logan earlier as well. There is nothing worse than an unhappy client, and I think both Logan and Silva have demonstrated that they do a great job of making sure that they do their best work for their clients, not just because they don't want any negative ramifications, but because they understand the importance of being good to as many people as possible. It all comes back around. Treat every call as a potential online reviewer. I work with an attorney who is expensive. He's expensive on purpose. And he gets calls from people that can't afford him. It is very difficult for him, although we have taught him, it is very difficult for him to not roll his eyes and not appear to be rude once he figures out that you can't afford him. But the problem is that what you get is people that have never hired you now have the ability to go onto Yelp, onto Google, onto wherever, and leave a review about how this person, when I talked to them for 5 minutes, treated me rudely or anything other than professionally. Don't let one unhappy reviewer dictate how your firm is perceived overall, I guess is the lesson to learn there. You can go ahead to the next slide. All right. Once you've landed your client, provide excellent service. This is exactly what Silva was just talking about, particularly in the beginning. Make sure that you're doing an excellent job with your clients, particularly in the beginning, and that 80-20 rule will work itself out. Again, we have to foster these relationships where possible. Silva's saying that she does it, and she's a criminal law attorney. I imagine it's easier to foster long-term personal relationships with those outside of the criminal world, but it's equally important in the criminal world as well. We go back to earlier when we were saying get to know your people, get to know your clients, build your network with one. Every one should be an advancement towards your pipeline growing. Ask for the referrals, ask for testimonials. Unless you're in a state that frowns upon it, ask for online reviews. All of these things will go to help you grow your pipeline, your network, your online experience, your online footprint. And all of this leads to more calls coming in, which is the goal of all of this in the first place. Silva, do you ask for testimonials, referrals, reviews, etc. when you're done with a satisfied client?
Oh, I do, but I think I'm sure Logan's going to agree with this. It's really hard because you feel like you've done such a great service, and then you're like, well, hey, can you post a review? I'm a member of avo.com, and what I love about Avo is they'll send just a quick email that you just have to put the email of your client, and it says, hey, if you're satisfied with my services, can you write a quick review? And that's been really helpful. But you have to ask your satisfied clients. And I'll tell you, out of 10 clients, maybe 5 do it. And in my profession in criminal law, I really try to emphasize, look, it can be anonymous. Nobody wants to write their name that either themselves or their children have been arrested. So I just really ask them, keep it anonymous, and I'll remind my clients every few months, hey, if you're really satisfied with me, do you mind writing a review? In fact, one of my clients, I dismissed her case last year. We got it dismissed in court. She literally waited 10 months to write an outstanding review for me. And it was wonderful, very unexpected, but I had reminded her about 4 or 5 times. So just stay on top of it. Logan, I'm sure you've gone through the same thing. It's so hard to ask for them, but you have to.
Yeah, I will piggyback off that. It is definitely tough to make the ask because no one likes to, keep being persistent, especially when the case is over. Probably the last thing they want to do is deal with you after going through the process. So there are certain ways to go ahead and kind of send soft reminders. Some attorneys have CRM systems like Salesforce or content relationship management that will send, soft emails out to the client. Hey, how would you rate your experience? So there are ways to go about asking without having to ask yourself. What I do in my practice is I go through my roster of clients and I pinpoint the ones that I think I have a really good relationship with, and then I ask them to review. And if they don't, like Silva said, maybe 5 out of 10, more like 1 out of every 10 of my clients, because a lot of them aren't technologically sophisticated. So if I get 1 out of every 10, that's a good thing. I know a lot of attorneys here in Los Angeles, they just badger their clients, and a lot of them have like 500 Yelp reviews. So it's kind of a personal preference how you want to deal with it, but also keep in mind Yelp can be a double-edged sword. You can get a lot of good stuff there, but they have they have this algorithm that filters reviews, so they don't want people going there just to solicit reviews for the appearance of looking good. They want it to be credible and to make sure that there's some type of system that it's not the attorney generating reviews just to make his business or her business look better. So make sure that the reviews are authentic, and make sure that the people are not feel like you're badgering them. I always kind of walk that gray line. So I think that answers that.
Yeah, so it's important, it's necessary, it's not easy, and nobody likes doing it. But I think as you guys start out in the business world, you'll find that I'm always amazed at the response for me personally. I'll say, hey, do you happen to know any other attorneys? Obviously, I know you don't want to give me a direct competitor, but do you happen to know any other attorneys that might be able to use my service in the area? I'll say half the time they go, actually, yeah, you know what? There's person A, there's person B, there's this other attorney C, and before I know it, I'm frantically writing down names. It's difficult to get the ask out, like Logan said, but it's usually well worth doing it. Silva, I noticed on your site that we were displaying on the slide here that you do promote some awards and badges and things to help distinguish you from others. So clearly you see the advantage in that. For a young lawyer, what's the best way to get some of these accolades promoted?
Yeah, it's that's also a double-edged sword too, because you never know when to stop. There's so many companies that come out with, hey, 10 best lawyer or 5 best lawyer. Fortunately or unfortunately, clients really like seeing those plaques. They like seeing it on the site. For instance, if one attorney's a super lawyer and another isn't, sometimes they'll say, oh, I hired this super lawyer instead. So it is important. In the very beginning, again, I kind of stuck with Avvo because I couldn't afford a website. So spending so much time as I did with Avvo, they kind of give you your own site. That's when I developed my first badge was through them, and my rating, like superb customer service or, top, or Silva rated 10. And that really helped because clients were like, oh, this girl is at the top of her game. She got a 10. Super Lawyers was another. The way that you kind of get there is to spend time on the site. Unfortunately, a lot of the sites you have to pay for. Avvo to start is absolutely free, and even Super Lawyers is free. So if money is an issue, focus on those avenues. And as you get bigger, you can invest money in those avenues to get more of what you need, depending. But badges have been actually quite important for me. I think it makes the website look really good. Clients feel like your name is really out there. And again, for a beginning lawyer who doesn't have media, in other words, you're not on TV or you're not doing radio, these things give that, make the client feel better that you're out there, that your name is recognized. So it definitely does help.
Okay, perfect. I just want to ask one question. I think this is probably for both of you, but I think it's interesting just to see the arc. I'll start with Silva. How has your networking and your marketing efforts changed from the very beginning to where you are today? And obviously, we understand that there's more money to put into it today than there was in the very beginning. But I'm thinking more from a strategy standpoint. How has it evolved over time?
I mean, thankfully for me, this is my fourth year, and it's been the best year I've had. After year two, I was really not sure whether this thing was going to be successful. But the more feelers you put out there, the better. So how has it changed? Well, I don't have to hustle as much right now, because it's like putting seeds in the ground. I put a lot of seeds out there my first 2 years, and everyone told me just wait for year three, and those seeds develop. So what were those seeds? Number one, one-on-one marketing, just meeting as many people as possible, meeting lawyers in different fields as your own, so they feel confident to refer their clients if something happens. For instance, personal injury attorneys, bankruptcy attorneys, business attorneys especially have been really great for me, because if they have a client who was arrested, they can send over the client to me. And for me, a referral who can pay is great. And that's why corporate attorneys have been so good, because those business leaders can afford the representation for themselves or their family. Also, again, building, now I can afford a website. And so my referral network has gone on my website, where blogging and articles have attracted more people. For instance, I started on Avvo for free. I now pay for it to get me even broader into the world. So it's changed in that I can afford more marketing. It's not as a guerrilla effort. And if you plant the seeds in the correct manner, the same will happen to young lawyers who realize, pretty soon you're going to get these huge referral sources, and you had no idea your first 2 years. And I'll tell the young lawyers too, don't be shocked if the first 2 years your referral sources don't give you work. They will eventually give you work. It's just in the beginning, they want to see that you have a proven track record.
That's great. And just so the guys out there understand, Avvo, Martindale.com, Lawyers.com, all Martindale legal network properties like that, are the reviews and the ratings are free. And I agree with Silva. Money's going to be tight in the beginning, but get as many recognitions as you can for as little as you possibly can. Logan, same question for you before we start to wrap up, is how has your networking and marketing efforts evolved and changed since the beginning?
My strategy has changed to more inward marketing versus outward marketing. Like Silva was saying, you was more guerrilla in the beginning. Now I'm starting to mine my client database and put more money into advertising. But there was one word that she said in the beginning: you have to be selective. There's a ton of vendors that are going to come and ask for you to spend money with them. Or the famous line I always used to get, hey, you want to be number one on Google? It's like, duh, everyone wants to be number one on Google. But in Los Angeles or any big market, I'm competing against people that spend 6-7 figures a month in advertising, and I don't have that marketing budget. So you have to be very selective. You have to set a marketing budget, and you have to be patient, and you have to be consistent. So develop a strategy, develop a yearly plan, and keep to it. And I think that, like she was saying, the more seeds you plant, be patient, it will materialize. But don't also be afraid to shake it up and go outside the box. If you guys look on my site, I have fun with advertising. A lot of those pictures I took were just stupid ideas that were sent to me, like, hey, you have a great last name, take advantage of it. So have fun, be yourself, be selective, and be patient, and everything will come back to you. So to answer your question, my guerrilla efforts have kind of changed, but I still like that. I always found that was the most rewarding, but now I have less time to go out and have lunch with everyone. I probably should hire someone, but it's hard for me to make a financial commitment for a full-time marketing person. So my efforts now have turned more inward to develop my base of clients and to kind of market myself digitally.
Great. No, I think that's not a rare story. I think we find that in a lot of places. Silver, Logan, I mean, these have been really eye-opening, enlightening answers, and I appreciate the help on this call. John, I guess we'll kick it back to you.
Thank you. Thank you. As a reminder to everybody watching this webinar, you can submit questions through the platform. Any questions that we don't have time to answer during this presentation will be responded to after the event. One question that has come in that I want to toss out there is how many small things do you do for free to land someone? And when do you determine it's time to tell the potential client that it's time to hire you?
I can take this because I offer free consultations. I know Silva probably doesn't like giving away free things. Personal injury attorneys tend to give away more free advice because we offer free consultations as a rule. But at the same time, you don't want to give away the house. So in the beginning, I was more open with my advice. I thought that if I was more forthcoming, eventually they would get frustrated with the process and come back to me. Now I give away less, and I have a little less patience with people that keep asking for more and more. And after like the third or fourth question, I just say, hey, if you want me to help you out, you're going to have to sign a retainer because I have less time to answer those questions, but I don't want to be rude. But you also have to keep in mind that there's people out there that are trying to take advantage of you, so you have to develop boundaries. So give away a few pieces, but save, like Silva said, save the nuggets for when they come in the office and sign the retainer.
Yeah, absolutely agree with Logan. Absolutely agree. Yeah, just always, in the beginning, you're going to be a little bit desperate, just like I was. I spent so much time in my client interviews and my phone calls. Now I limit them, and give yourself a limit. Say, for instance, just for a phoner, no longer than 10 minutes, and then push for an in-house meeting. And at the in-house meeting, say no more than 30 minutes or 1 hour before you ask them to retain you. I found it really effective to set limits so I don't give too much of myself to every person.
Thank you. Recognizing that a lot of times young lawyers have few referral sources, what did you do in the beginning to really build your network? And did you ever find yourself doing something that wasn't really working?
Oh, I'll jump in here, Logan. I'll set it to you after this. But in the beginning, it was exactly what Logan said. I was harassed by every kind of company who said, "Do you want to be number one on Google?" And you kind of get suckered in because they make unrealistic promises. And I will just tell the young lawyers out there, please ask for advice before you sign to anything. I spent about $2,500 for a quote unquote marketing expert that led me to zero. And then I spent this was all in the first year, another $3,000 of hard earned money on a quote unquote marketing company out of the state of California that gave me nothing. So you learn the hard way. Ask your friends, hey, has this such and such worked for you? Has such and such worked for you? I'll tell, again, I'm not being paid by Avvo in any capacity, but I'll tell you, before I joined Avvo, I asked quite a few people about it and who it specifically worked for, because I kind of learned the hard way after spending $5,000 of money I didn't have. You kind of learn how to better assess it. Logan, I'm sure you went through the same thing.
Yeah, I don't even want to tell you guys how much money I spent trying to find the right marketing solution. And I don't think there is ever a right marketing solution. You're going to get your clients from several different sources. So always be willing to look. Talk to Brian. Brian's a legal specialist. He obviously has done this for 10 years. He's going to do it very well. But when you start out, you might not have the money to spend. So be leery of people trying to get your business. Like Silva said, they make promises that don't pan out. I still do things that don't work out. So you have to keep trying to reinvent yourself and be creative and find new ways to get clients, but do it within the rules of your state or wherever you may be. Don't do anything that's going to push the envelope. But don't be afraid to go out there and do something creative or go talk to people. I think the best way for me was just person-to-person marketing when you're first starting out, because you have time and not so many clients. Hopefully that will change as you grow. You have less time and you have more money. So figure out what you have available to you. If you don't have any money, take the time and go out and like I said, pound the pavement, develop your target audience, and it will be slow, but it will be worth it because those will become your best referral sources. Some of my best referral sources are the people I generated from day one.
Absolutely.
Thank you both. I think we have time for maybe one more question, and I'd like to ask about your experiences talking to other lawyers as opposed to people who aren't lawyers, and if your approaches were different for that, or how you found the different types of marketing to impact the clients you were getting.
I think Zoa said something very important earlier. She said develop an elevator speech. I joined this network called BNI. I absolutely hated it because I hated going to lunch every Wednesday for an hour and a half and having small talk with these people. But one valuable lesson that I learned was that you need to develop a 30-second commercial or an elevator speech for each target audience that you're looking to get clients from. So if you're looking to get clients from ordinary people, don't try, just be yourself. Talk to them as you would talk to anyone else. If you're going to talk to professionals, generate that commercial, but you also have to be yourself. I remember one time I went to BNI and I wore Nikes and they were all laughing at me. But that's just how I am. I don't wear a suit and tie every day. I show up to work in Nikes and pants, but that's just me. And they said, oh, we're never going to give you business. 3 years later, I saw that same attorney and she was struggling and I was doing fine. So don't be afraid to be yourself. But also keep in mind that you have to fit the part. So in the beginning, you don't want to talk yourself out of business, but have these elevator speeches in your pocket and be comfortable with who you are, and you will get business.
And Logan, I feel like I agree with everything you say, but let me also add to that too. Always have business cards in your pockets, because when you meet lawyers, make sure that they memorialize your face to the name. I found that really essential. I'm like Logan too. I don't look like the average criminal defense attorney. I dress a certain way and I attract a certain type of referral base. My experience now, I know, speaks for who I am, but make sure they remember you. And 9 times out of 10, it's that little speech that you create that's going to make you memorable. Just like Logan has a really cool last name. I don't have the benefit of the last name. Very few people can say Megerditchian well. So I use what I have, which is my experience, my face, when I say my little elevator speech, and I will tell you when I'm finished, they remember my name is Silva. So it's really important to have that.
The only thing I would add to that is picture yourself at a cocktail party or something, and you're making small talk, and somebody says, "What do you do for a living?" or "How do I know you're good at it?" You should be able to roll off a 1-2 sentence, quick explanation that completely verifies who you are, what you do, and why you're good at it. And if you don't have that yet, start to work on it. It is important.
Very good. Thank you all so much. And that's all the time we have for questions today. We would like to thank you for joining us today. Thank you, speakers and panelists, and thank our sponsor, the Martindale Legal Marketing Network. We hope you all take care and have a great day, and participate in more webinars in the future. Thank you.